simplification. We're going to talk about what's real, what's not real. To do so, I'm joined by Nicholas Galante. He is the Programmatic Manager at Direct Agents, and Brian Zabin, who is the Director of Programmatic Strategy at Digitas LBI. So, when it comes to simplification, this gets thrown around. Nicholas, I want to start with you.
Sure.
What ends up being the big challenge within your organization?
Right now, I feel like most of the brands that come to us, they come to us with very specific needs. Most of the value propositions of programmatic are now pretty well known. Automation, scale, efficiency. But a lot of our partners have tried X, whatever X may be, and they found certain issues in the past, whether it was a question of incrementality, whether it was a question of transparency, whether it was a question of efficiency, not hitting goals, and coming to us with, again, those specific needs. So I almost feel like simplification isn't the right question. Programmatic is always going to be, there's always going to be some level of complexity there. But it's our job to sort of figure out the interior and allow the brand and the partner to sort of dictate strategy, direction.
So there's no sort of internal challenge when it comes to the sort of complexity. I mean, that's your job is to sort of sort it out.
Correct.
Okay. So, Brian, how about within a large agency like Digitas? I mean, we heard about Starcom trying to train 1,200 people to sort of speak programmatic.
Sure. So getting everyone on the same page with the 101s, et cetera, we are completely on board. That's kind of table stakes, right?
Okay.
People need to speak the same language. We know that. Where the simplification, the challenge comes is now how do I take my media team, educate them on how to create media, leverage the tools that we have to create sophisticated media plans. How do I get my analytics teams to learn these tools now that they have at their disposal to go in and derive insights, create audience segmentation, et cetera. That's really the challenge we've encountered now, taking it to that next level and continuing to educate and learn over and over, which makes it less simple.
Okay. But how about sort of external challenges?
Sure. Externally, I think it's our job as the agency to educate our clients and our brands, similar to what Nicholas said, about removing some of the noise that's in the marketplace, coming with a point of view on platforms or partners or approach to programmatic. We can get into some of the private marketplace issues that we've encountered, and we might touch on that a little bit later. But I think really for us, the most external issues for us is educating the brands, making sure they're continually up to speed.
Yeah. Nicholas, what are sort of external challenges that you run into in the market?
Again, it really boils down to three things, at least with us. Right now, it's sort of creating a unified solution. Most brands have search, they have email, they have direct mail, they have all that sort of refer, social activity going on, either running in parallel or running all through sort of our roof. So with me, the biggest challenge is, again, proving incrementality. And then helping them solve for X. And in this case, X is porting away from last click attribution. We were speaking yesterday, one of the smartest moves Google ever made was last click. And brands just now understand this is not
That's amazing
viable.
that you're still dealing with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, this far.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, is that part of the larger attribution challenge?
I would say yes. Yeah, I think last click, it's embedded in our ad server. It's easy right now, right? It's very hard to pivot away from that. And business rules or models on the client side are still beholden to some of that. So one, we need to educate the client on that that's not the right approach, right? We all know last click's not the right approach, but how do we ultimately change their business model to reward the fractional attribution or whatnot? But embedding that into how we run reporting and how we make decisions from a optimization standpoint to a media mix standpoint, that's tough, and it's a process.
Yeah. Do you have any specific examples of sort of success cases when it comes to that?
In terms of incrementality.
When I ask for specifics, then everyone looks at each other.
No.
And changing the sort of last click mentality and mindset at clients?
So there are a lot of different models running around right now. One is positional, one is geometric breakdowns, but to me the most common sense way to approach this is in terms of time. I'm sure a lot of people in this room are familiar with the concept of time decay models.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple touch points in the path to purchase. I'm telling a brand, well, your view-through event just took place within 10 minutes of seeing an ad. That's a pretty statistically significant point to make, and it allows the brand to say, okay, well, if a user touched search 29 days ago, they saw a social blast, they saw an email blast, they came to a landing page, they hit the cart, for whatever reason they didn't convert, and then within 5 minutes they see my ad, and then they ultimately convert. Time is the best sense of, well, within that pathway, who should get the most credit based on where those events took place in terms of time signatures. So no brand is the same. Everyone's coming to this with sort of a unique mix. So our job is just to make sure that the value add is crystal clear, and the surest way to do that is in terms of time.
Who do you see getting too much credit?
Google.
What about the retargeters?
Yeah, of course.
So in programmatic, there are two frameworks, right? One part's prospecting, the other part retargeting. There are vendors on both sides, arguably more on the bottom side of the coin. It's a smart play. I would hedge my bet there 5 years ago too. The only issue is with the retargeters is you're not getting full funnel. And they're not delivering pure value add, because if all you're doing is monetizing existing hits, then what true value are you actually bringing to a brand? If you are layering in prospecting, if you are bringing new users into the equation and measuring the full funnel effect of a prospecting click that leads to a retargeting conversion, then you've got something.
I would add that I think with that, you can retarget, and if you're optimizing to that KPI and looking at the retargeting by itself, right, you're going to continue to optimize down, but then you're going to have no scale, right? So exactly what Nicholas talked about, you need to continue to feed that with prospecting, and how do you measure that, right? If you don't have an attribution model, then it's using what tools you do have, looking at assist to conversion, running on and off tests, maybe pulsing where you're prospecting versus your retargeting. If you do have an attribution model, and you asked for specifics, I think one of the ways we were able to overcome that was a brand like Whirlpool that we have. They don't have retail stores. They used to measure everything just on brand lift, but ultimately they wanted to understand what type of revenue they were getting. So you had to work with the stores that they are engaging with to provide the feedback, the data, and ultimately make decisions long-term based on the net profit, not just a survey response that you got 6 months later.
Yeah. So for a client like Whirlpool, are they truly using programmatic for brand purposes?
Yeah, I would say yes, they are. They, not as much as they probably should from my perspective, but I'm the programmatic guy, so. But yes, they are, and they're testing, and they're moving as best they can. They're using it they're trying native, trying takeovers where they can programmatically, marrying whatever type of data they can to those impressions. And it's not a DR play. It is a true branding play.
Let's pivot a little bit and talk about the private marketplaces. I think a lot of publishers are pinning a lot of their programmatic strategy on these private marketplaces. What are some of the problems from the buy side?
It's still a very complex space, right? We have automated guaranteed, preferred deals, private auctions, and then open exchange, right? Understanding which model to use on which area of the funnel is an education process with the media team. But then ultimately it also becomes, I want a universal view of everything that I'm doing from PMP, right? Or PMP and retargeting, right? Do the economics work out for me to source inventory for a private marketplace, but then run it through my DSP where I have to pay technology tax on top of that? And now, if I haven't negotiated the rates accordingly, right, the economics might not fit for that actual buy. So navigating through that and really understanding what that impact is from doing a private marketplace. And also, who's sourcing the inventory? Is it me? Is it the DSP? Is it the SSP? We're still working through a lot of those kinks, and it's still evolving.
Is there anything specific that you think publishers, or like a trap that publishers fall into when it comes to implementing a private marketplace?
Not understanding what the price should truly be. Like, we look at it as,
That means being too high of a price.
well, yeah, well, or that, or like where
It's a
have
nice way of putting
where
it.
have I been clearing in the open auction, right?
Okay.
And what should that floor necessarily be? Not just if it's still a biddable private marketplace, right? And truly working together to identify what that price model should be to still, so the economics, like I mentioned, do work out.
Yeah. Nicholas, are you seeing those kind of challenges when it comes to private marketplaces? Are you mostly in the
So the
open
best
exchange?
indicator of PMP is open marketplace, at least in terms of our testing. So I need to see a number of things. I need to see trends. I need to see time of day, day of week, placement, and then all those additional targeting criteria on top of it. For any given site, we're not just running PMP for run of site, unless one particular publisher over-indexes high for whatever profile we're looking to target. But for us, everything is performance-based. It has to lead to CPA, CPI, CPL, CPO, some measurable, actionable event. And if I'm paying 2 or 3x what I am on the open to accomplish the same goal, then we've got an issue. So generally, I approach PMP in terms of, am I getting a response in the open marketplace? If so, at what rate? And then compound a multiple and say, here's what I can realistically pay for this PMP.
Yeah.
But I understand from the publisher's standpoint, it all makes sense. With open, there wasn't margin protection. By putting in a CPM floor, it gives them peace of mind. But I feel like it's early, we're in the incubation stage, and we sort of need to find a balance between what I should actually pay to accomplish the same goal.
Brian, I want to talk about mobile for a little bit. One of the things that was coming up in the publisher town hall was a lot of the struggles when it comes to monetizing mobile. A lot of publishers are just not seeing enough demand. That's what they said. Is the buy side a little bit behind when it comes to adjusting to this new mobile reality?
I would say yes. If you're looking at performance-based campaigns, sometimes it's very hard to tie the mobile interactions, right, to the conversion, especially on a last touch basis if you're still in that model. But also, you know, from a programmatic standpoint, what tools are we using to buy mobile, right? Your traditional desktop DSPs that are trying to re-engineer to go to target in mobile might not be the best use case. But then if I'm using 3 or 4 different tools, how am I tying that all together to really understand that conversation across? So I think there's been difficulties there and some hesitation on exactly how do I measure in mobile and how do I prove the performance. We all know we need to be there, right? And we know that that's where the dollars will start to shift. How do we prove that out to the clients on a regular basis from branding to DR?
Yeah. Nicholas, is the majority of your activity still desktop?
Yes and no. So I am...
What does that mean?
So mobile in what context? Mobile web or in-app? So we're doing a mixture of both, but in terms of tying in desktop activity to in-app, it's amazing. So right now we're, without naming names, we're running all the programmatic campaigns for a top 3 video streaming provider. And they are inundated with video. They are inundated with desktop. They are inundated with mobile web. But tying in a mobile web click deep link to an in-app activity, even with mobile measurement providers, is challenging. So you said a quote yesterday from Benedict Evans, 80% of the world is going to have a smartphone by 2020. And here we are playing with desktop attribution, improving last click. These are all obsolete environments. So mobile and videos, we're investing a whole lot of time. And really when you break down mobile, if 70 to 80% of the mobile landscape is actually in-app versus mobile web, well, what are the mechanics? How is mobile app environment configured now? We're all driving this sort of install. And then if you look at the post-install metrics, only 30% of your installs are actually translating to usage. So what's the problem in mobile? The problem in mobile is not one of acquisition, not one of install, but one of retention. So this is what we are fundamentally focusing on now. So driving sort of installs and turning them into users. And that's through deep linking, that's through dynamic re-engagement, that's through email, push notifications, all these different things. So to say we can just use desktop mentalities and apply it to mobile, mobile is a completely different beast.
Okay, I want to open it up to questions. We have microphones around. Just raise your hand and you'll get a moment. There's one over here.
Hey, Brian, Nick, Seth Lazar from Programmatic. I heard a couple of pieces of feedback from Private Marketplace. It sounds like you guys are looking for performance in open auction and then tying that back to the cost in Private Marketplace. But when you speak about PMP, obviously one of the reasons why you're paying a little bit more is because it's private. I mean, I wanted to see if you guys are taking into account increased URL transparency, prioritization over the open auction, and building those private relationships that you may not have before.
I would say yes, we definitely are. But from Nick's perspective, in a performance aspect, right, when that's what he's bound by and that's his objective, maybe not so much. From a branding or full funnel approach perspective, yes, I would say without a doubt, it's understanding where that private marketplace deal fits in the funnel, from an automated guaranteed again to a preferred deal to a private auction. And we know the end goal of automation, right? I think where we get held up is sometimes it's not very automated, right? That whole preferred deal. So I would say yes, depending on the tactic and where it lands with your brand, that is definitely an indicator of how we look at private marketplace.
Okay, Nicholas, anything to add to that?
So I would like to have this as automated as possible. I would like to be able to tap into PMPs the same way that I'm tapping into Rubicon, Pubmatic, AdX, every SSP that we're tapped into now. Make that process as seamless as possible, and that gives me the flexibility to test all the above and let the data speak for itself. So it's a tough question to answer. Again, I feel like it's a young space. It still needs to grow. Transparency is huge. Impression depth is huge. But I'm always asking the question, what does the word premium mean in private marketplace, and what overall effect does that have on my performance?
Okay, cool. We're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for the conversation. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks. Okay.